Let's first start with Powerhouse Radio. Tell me, how did you get into broadcasting?
I was born and raised in New York City. I became interested in radio primarily because I listened to radio all the time. Now, my first influences, of course, were what my mother used to listen to. And she used to listen to the station that broadcast primarily big band, old school, Frank Sinatra, Ella Fitzgerald, that type of music.
Mhm.
But then as things changed, as I became, let's say, around the age of 8, 9, 10, radio changed and more contemporary music became popular. So I listened to the radio. I noticed that except for the black stations in the New York City area, on the white stations, there were not that many black broadcasters. So that was interesting to me. By the time I got to high school, when I graduated from high school, I got a job as a mail clerk for the American Broadcasting Company. And the American Broadcasting Company was located in Midtown Manhattan in New York City. And it was a half a block away from my high school. So I got a job in the mailroom. I worked during the summer, 3 months, doing those duties. And during my off time while I was working or lunch periods, I would go to the broadcast radio studios and watch some of the performers perform doing their shows. I thought that was something that, again, was in the back of my mind. Then the next step was going to New York University and becoming a part of the college radio station, WNYU AM and FM. While I was there, I became very proficient in audio editing. I was a math major. Don't ask me why, but then I switched to film because they didn't really have a broadcast curriculum track that you could follow. So I started as an amateur. Because of good connections at the school radio station, I was able to get a job as a broadcast engineer at the public radio station WRVR, which was owned by the Riverside Church in New York. I was able to work there for a period of time. Then after that, it was over to WLIB and WBLS in New York as a board engineer. After that, I went to upstate New York, worked for a small town radio station, population of about 40,000. Then the next part of the journey on to Atlantic City, still becoming an on-air performer, a music director, program director.
Spiro Agnew, making his first network television appearance since he resigned as vice president more than 2 years ago, said today he would probably not choose politics as a career if he had it to do over again. Agnew said most of the reasons lie with the news media. He charges that the news media is running the country. That's National Black Network News. I'm Hugh Morgan.
You're listening to 1490 WUSF and Kingsley Smith.
Capricorn.
8 years there, then off to Philadelphia, 16 years there, and then down to Washington, D.C., working for the NPR network. And I was one of the program directors there. So management was always important to me because, let's face it, if you are on the team of the decision makers, that's one of the most important functions that you can have.
Yes, yes. Such a great career. And like you said, I think it's important to have African Americans and women and as much diversity in the decision-making positions as possible. In your book description for Powerhouse Radio, you talk about how community radio has seen better days. Can you kind of elaborate on that?
Once upon a time, you were pretty much a sounding board for the interests of the community, whether it was just, let's say, a community announcement about a social function that was happening at a church. It could be something as simple as a lost dog. Maybe it's a pancake breakfast, but the community was very close to you. They would write you letters. This predates email.
Yeah.
It predates text
media.
messages.
Yeah,
That's right. There was a certain real strong connection with the community. Now, sometimes the community wasn't always backing you financially the way we all wanted to, but that was just a reflection of hard economic times because we don't get as many of the job opportunities for higher salaries as some other people do. So that's why it's a real hard road for many of the Black-owned stations. Now, what happened to increase minority ownership? The FCC in the 70s said, we're going to introduce something called a distress sale. A distress sale was created primarily to allow white-owned stations to sell to a minority ownership, which was defined as at least 50% ownership at a reduced price. So that helped in the 70s, but unfortunately, as the 80s and the 90s came on, the FCC loosened regulations. So you could now own, maybe originally you could only own 5 stations in a market. Then it might have had increased to 10 stations in a large market, and then 15 stations, plus the newspapers. So I detail a lot of that. That's pretty much what I meant by community-based, because the problem now is there are only 3 or 4 media groups that own all the radio stations. So if you're owning 500 radio stations, there's really not a close community connection. It's corporate-based.
Yes.
There's not that local connection with the people that are listening. It's funny, another quick story. I was in Atlantic City about a year ago, and the station that I used to work for, it's now an iHeartMedia station. And the announcer that was on, the midday announcer, it's pre-recorded. I believe this particular person, I'm not even going to name the gender, but they're in Philadelphia recording the voice tracks, which are dropped in locally. And she was mispronouncing the one of the local towns. And I'm saying, this is a year after they bought this station. Why isn't somebody listening and letting this person know what's going on? But it's a comedy of errors.
Yeah, I feel the same about community newspapers, where especially Black newspapers, where I got my start. It's unfortunately a sad state of affairs. Like you said, it's not as connected with the community, and the deregulation with these huge conglomerates owning so many chains of things. You would think if you're a huge conglomerate, you have more resources, but unfortunately it seems like a race to the bottom to try to operate on as little money, spend as little money, and make as much money as you can, seems to be the mindset.
Chris, I don't know how much time you have, but I'd like to say a little bit about the Black History book.
Yes, I wanted to ask you about that. Sure.
When I graduated from high school, my last semester, I took all electives because I had already amassed all the credits to graduate. So the final semester, I just, whatever I wanted to take. One subject that I took, one course that was offered, it was called Asian African History. I said, well, this is great. I want to learn more about Black history. One of the books in the course was by Lerone Bennett Jr. Now, Lerone Bennett Jr. was the first senior editor of Ebony magazine, and Ebony was owned by John H. Johnson. And in this book, the Black History book that I wrote, I do, of course, have a section about John H. Johnson. So let me backtrack a little bit. Lerone Bennett Jr.'s book was called Before the Mayflower, A History of the Negro in America, 1619 to 1964. And that did it for me. From that point, I guess I was 17 years old, I was 100% interested in learning more about Black history. So as the 80s ended, I had already graduated from Rutgers University. I said, let me start a company. It's going to be software-based, developing software applications. So I did develop a software application that took 5 years to finish, started in 1993, finished in 1998. And it was called Power Encyclopedia, the African American Multimedia Collection. I wouldn't use that title again for a few different reasons, but the multimedia, I don't like jargon-based words that people don't really understand. So I finished that, and it wasn't very successful. It wasn't successful because people didn't seem willing to buy it at the time, because of course it was a commercial product. But times change. When the online download media convenience started coming along in the 2000s, it said, let me take some of this information that I've already written about and let me create some smaller applications that people can download from either the App Store for iOS or from Google Play. And so that's what I did with all the material that was put in this original CD software, Empower Encyclopedia. Now, the other thing I did, I said, well, let me coalesce this into a book. So in 2011, I took basically the text material and I put it in a book. The book was called, and is still called, People in Black History, Famous African Americans. Written in 2011, I used my middle name, which is a pen name, Hugh Smith, and that was out on Amazon. Fortunately, we have new Black history makers. We learn so much from people's experiences. And let's face it, people started to learn about what came before them from storytellers,
Right.
from oral history. And then oral history became handwritten history. Handwritten history then became mechanical when the printing press was created. And then it goes, of course, on to typewriters and digital and so forth. So I said, I need to rewrite this book. So in 2025, I took 8 months to really rewrite everything from the beginning to end. Went to the library, got some of the research librarians to help me identify more primary sources that I could use for the information. And also, we would dive into some of the databases that you can only get if you have a subscription and you're a librarian. So I couldn't just jump on to online and get this info. And it's also, it's important to point out that when I wrote the original book, there was no online. As I said, I wrote well, there was a little bit, but between 93 and 98, those 5 years, if you really wanted to do the research, you had to seek out the primary sources and reinterpret then the original manuscripts and then craft it in your own unique way when you've done additional research on top of it. So in January of this year, 2026, the revised version, it's really a second edition, but I couldn't call it that with the paperback. So it is People in Black History, Famous African Americans. As a matter of fact, I have it right here. If you don't mind, I'll hold it up.
Sure,
You might get a light show from all the lights that are in front of me. So it has 29 chapters from A to Z. And I try to include a lot of newer folks in there, people like Simone Biles, the gymnast, or Amanda Gorman, the poet. Of course, you're going to find all the traditional people, W.E.B. Du Bois. I mentioned John H. Johnson, Carter G. Woodson, and others. So I tried to pack a lot of information in, but I didn't want it to be obtuse. I didn't want it to be pedantic. I didn't want it to be super scholarly, as if I was trying to do an academic presentation. No, this is for, I would say, high school through adult. And it's written in very conversational language, generally pretty much the way I speak. I mean, I wasn't afraid to use one or two of those $5 words.
What do you feel about the change that social media and the internet have brought, where basically anyone can be a broadcaster? Anyone could have a YouTube channel, a podcast, make videos on Instagram or TikTok. I mean, on the one hand, it's sort of democratized the industry or the field. On the other hand, someone doesn't have to have training like you and experience like you have. They can go on their platform and spread misinformation. What is your opinion about that?
Broadcasting used to be apprentice-based. Yeah. And now the apprenticeship has been replaced with interns. but let me directly answer your question. It's good to be able to jump behind the microphone and jump behind the video camera, do your thing without any guidance. But where you can take advantage of the technology is if you have a mentor or somebody that can give you more guidance as to what to do correctly and what to shy away from. And that's what a lot of these podcasters and YouTubers lack. I mean, I'm sure you, Chris, and anybody watching or listening has had the experience where you've jumped on YouTube and somebody has promised to give you some information or to entertain you, and 2 minutes have gone by and they're still telling you what they're going to give you. 3 minutes, 4 minutes, you haven't got to the point. So it is a craft to know how to get right to the point. Yes, get something that's going to capture the attention very quickly, and then deliver what you promised. So yes, it's easy for anybody to jump on and pretend to be a pro. A lot of times, though, people will look at other videos and copy all the mistakes.
Yeah.
You don't want to copy the mistakes. You want to copy the folks that are really doing a really good job at it. And it's not all about the likes and the shares and the comments. Sometimes you have to ignore that stuff and just have a game plan.
What would your advice be to students who are majoring in journalism or communications now? They're graduating into an industry that is constantly changing and consolidating and being deregulated. A job that exists today, next year when they graduate, may not exist. So what would your advice be that those students can follow?
I would say if you're interested in being a podcaster, if you're interested in getting into video, volunteer. If you can't get an internship, if you can't get hired, volunteer. I used to do website design, and I used to teach website design at a computer school in the 1990s. And before I could get paid designing websites, I volunteered. And I did the first website for the Southeast Pennsylvania Red Cross website. I had gone to some meetings with a local group, and there was a need for somebody to do their website. I said, I can do it. And I did. And that led to the first paying job. So don't be afraid if you're involved in a community group, if you're involved at your school, if you're involved at your church. That's a good way to get involved and to make opportunities for yourself. It might be you find somebody who's willing to mentor you, you know somebody in the field that you want to work for, who you respect, then see what you can do to get them to help you. Sometimes it's just a helping hand. It's one person that opens your eyes, and you can move forward to do something positive and beneficial for everyone.
Excellent advice. Well, Kingsley, it's just been great speaking with you.
Absolutely, Chris. Thank you very much. And it was a pleasure to be here. And thank you for the opportunity to talk.